Hey, Randy Walker here, and I have a special guest on our World Tennis Magazine YouTube channel, and I know our author here today, Chris Lewitt, high performance coach and author of the book Secrets of Spanish Tennis. He's going to be sharing this on his channels as well. So, Chris, great to have you here to talk a little bit about the secrets of Spanish tennis.
Great. I love talking about Spanish tennis. It's one of my favorite subjects. And remember, this 2.0 now, Secrets of
That's
Spanish
right. So
Tennis
here's
2.0.
here's the copy of the book. It's Secrets of Spanish Tennis 2.0,
Yes.
published by New Chapter Press, newchaptermedia.com, and appropriately we have in the background we have Carlos Alcaraz playing in Roland Garros third round match. But here for the 2025 Roland Garros, the 2025 French Open, it really started with a bang in that there was this amazing retirement ceremony for Rafael Nadal. And, one of the things that struck me, which I thought was the coolest part of that, in addition to having, Federer, Djokovic, and Murray there, but they actually had a footprint of Nadal on the side of the court. And, I thought that was very cool. But, looking at it from a wider point of view, you look at the impact that Rafael Nadal had on his footprint on Spanish tennis. Chris, why don't you just talk about just what his footprint has been meant to the whole country as far as developing tennis?
Yeah, it's really been an incredible journey. And that was a really powerful ceremony. And it really touched a lot of emotional chords with people around the world. Rafa's a fan favorite. He really, his values are the values that Tony Nadal taught him. He has so much character, so much discipline, and we can talk about Tony in a bit, but he really represents all of the values that Tony Nadal preaches and Tony Nadal teaches to his students. And Rafa is just an icon in Spain. I mean, Carlos Alcaraz grew up idolizing him, wanting to be like Rafa, and many young kids in Spain feel the same way. They all want to be like Rafa. So he was a driving force in Spanish tennis. And interestingly, he just happened to come along at a time in history when Spain was already doing very well with some other champions, like Emilio Sanchez and Sergio Bruguera and other great players of the Spanish Armada. And then Rafael Nadal came and just, dominated the world. So it was an incredible capstone to Spanish tennis, that great era of Spanish tennis. And now Alcaraz is trying to carry the mantle.
So, the difference with the new 2.0 version of the Secrets of Spanish Tennis is you have Tony Nadal's voice in the book, and you talk to him and have his drills and his methods and so forth, and just in his philosophies. Talk a little bit about what kind of impact Tony Nadal had not only on Rafa but on the entire Spanish tennis development system.
Yeah, so Tony Nadal is somewhat of an enigma for a lot of folks because he is guarded and it's hard to get access to him. Also, his English is not great. He's mostly coaches in Spanish. I've been fortunate enough to study his method quite closely, and I've actually interviewed him in person in Mallorca at his academy when the academy first got started. And he's I think he's really brilliant. He's really a philosopher. That's the interesting thing about him. He's a very deep thinker. He's a deep philosopher about tennis and life. He teaches a lot of life lessons to his students, and he really believes in building character. He believes that players who have strong character will compete better. And so he has just a wonderful character building system that I talk about in the book. He has wonderful drills. He has very eclectic drills. He has very modern drills. He's definitely like a Spanish tennis 2.0 example of a coach who's sort of updated the traditional Spanish methods and is teaching more of a modern style. I think because he traveled so many years with Rafa, he was just around the pro tour and he saw, he emphasizes all court play. He emphasizes strategically to be aggressive, to have an aggressive mindset, to take the ball on the rise and things like that. So he combines a lot of the wonderful traditions of Spain, which are consistency and some patience and perseverance with modern Spanish play that you see Alcaraz represents with more attacking style, being able to go to the net, taking the ball early. So he really sort of blends the traditional Spanish style with the modern Spanish type training.
Talk a little bit about Luis Bruguera. I mean, he was kind of more the inspiration in the first book, and obviously his son Sergi won Roland Garros twice, and then got to the final another year. Just talk a little bit about what Luis Bruguera means to Spanish tennis, and then kind of the new model, or the new modern coach for Spanish tennis is now Juan Carlos Ferrero, who is coaching Carlos Alcaraz.
Yes, this is an interesting historical link and bridge. There's a bridge there between Luis Bruguera is definitely sort of what I would call traditional style of Spanish coaching and teaching philosophy. For example, to try to give the viewers a picture, like Luis Bruguera would let players hang back deep behind the baseline, spin top spin balls, and grind. And there wasn't as much of an emphasis on taking the ball early, on on attacking as much. There's a very, very patient, there's a lot of defense in the Bruguera system, the way Sergi played as well. I mean, Sergi had a big forehand, but he was also a very good grinder. And so I think you see coaches like Tony Nadal and Juan Carlos Ferrero and Antonio Cascales, who was Juan Carlos Ferrero's coach and who also who helps with Alcaraz now. He's on the team. He's on Alcaraz's team, and he's the co-owner of the academy, Juan Carlos Ferrero Academy. Those guys are definitely a bridge to the past, and they represent a Spanish tennis 2.0. They represent a new style of Spanish tennis training that is more all court. It combines sort of the best of the old style, but it's hybridized, it's modernized. It's applied to the modern game. They take more risks. They attack a little more aggressively. So there's still that consistency and great movement and the mindset of a warrior, but it's combined with I think modern weapons and tools.
Talk a little bit about just what Carlos Alcaraz means for Spanish tennis. I mean, obviously Rafael Nadal was the icon in Spanish tennis, and now he's no longer around. But it really was the transition there was seamless. I mean, and prior to Nadal, you had kind of a group of Spanish legends. You had Alex Correia and Albert Costa and Sergi Bruguera and Carlos Moya. So you had that group, and then you had Nadal, and then now you have Alcaraz. I mean, what does he mean right now? The symbol of Spanish tennis.
Yeah, so I think the history is so interesting. So Luis Bruguera and Sergi were had an incredible impact on Spain. And Luis Bruguera, whether he's traditional or not, he's a genius coach. He's had a huge impact on my career. And so Sergi Bruguera started it all off when he won Roland Garros in '93 and '94. And that had a big impact on young kids and players at that time who felt they could compete at the international level and win slams. And then Rafa came next, as you mentioned, and he dominated and really established himself as one of the greatest players of all time. And then now Alcaraz, very fortunately, he came just near, in Rafa's twilight. And if he hadn't come along, I think Spain would have really had a void there. And fortunately, he came and has to a large extent filled Rafa's shoes. He's incredibly popular. He's dynamic. He's a fan favorite, and he's a different personality than Rafa. If you get a chance to watch his Netflix documentary, it's fascinating. You can learn about some of the struggles that he's having as a professional and how he's struggling with the obligations of being a top player. It's a really great, really well done Netflix documentary, and he's trying to differentiate himself from Rafa. He says in his documentary that he doesn't like being called the next Rafa. He wants to be his own person. But he's incredibly dynamic and charismatic, and people love him. He's electric on the court, and he's a shot maker. So I think he has to some extent filled the shoes of Rafa in terms of personality and fame, but certainly he's not even close to the achievements that Rafa had in terms of Grand Slams and success. So we'll see if he can keep it up.
Yeah, that's a tough hill to climb there to get to
Oh,
Eclipse 20 majors, but he's doing pretty good so far, right?
yeah, and he sort of vacillates between saying I just want to do it my own way and saying, I do want to be like one of the greatest of all time. I think there's like an inner struggle there happening even as we speak. Even his whole team is concerned about it. I think some of the best parts of that documentary were just the reflections of his team, just the honest reflections where they said they're really concerned. They're worried that he's not gonna, he might stop playing, or it was really it was a great documentary. But yeah, so he's deciding right now whether he just wants to be like a great player who won four slams, or a handful of slams, or if he wants to really go for it and commit himself to being one of the greatest players of all time. Like that's where his mind's at.
Very interesting. So talk a little bit about your journey. I mean, like you played college tennis at Cornell. Like, how did you get so enthralled with Spanish tennis to study it so meticulously, and all the trips that you've taken to Spain, and all the
Yeah.
academies that you visited? Just talking through your genesis of how you became this Spanish tennis expert as an American.
Yeah, it's a great story. I get asked that in many interviews. I think it's a wonderful story. I think it's a real lesson for everyone, just to follow your passion, follow your curiosity. I'm tremendously curious about many things, and in the early 2000s, when Spain started to dominate the world, people were asking the question, how is this little country doing that? How is a country with 40, 50 million people, how are they putting 15 players in the top 100? It's just incredible achievement. So I was super curious, and I heard many coaches saying that, they don't have a system, they just work hard, it's just kind of luck or hard work. And so I just didn't want to hear it secondhand. I wanted to go. So I just I booked a flight there when I was a young coach, and I took a certification course at the what was then the Sanchez Casal Academy. And as luck had it, Pato Alvarez, the legendary Spanish coach William Pato Alvarez, was there on site, and he was very gracious with me. He let me sit in on all his private lessons for a couple of weeks. I was a young coach. This was like an amazing opportunity for me. So I sat in, I watched all his lessons day after day. And you won't believe it, but during that time, I called up or I emailed the Bruguera Academy, which is just down the road. And I said that I was clever. So I said, I'm over here with Pato Alvarez studying his method, and he claims he's the best coach in the world. And he claims that he's responsible for Spanish tennis, he himself. And sure enough, I got an email back saying, please come over and speak with Mr. Bruguera. Come speak with Luis Bruguera because he has a different opinion. And that was my first time. I went to in that same trip. I went to the Bruguera Academy. I took a taxi over there, and Luis, we just hit it off. Like we had this tremendous connection, and we spent hours talking that first visit, and it was the beginning of a strong mentoring relationship. Luis is a veteran coach, and I've learned so much from him. Not only information for writing a book. I had no intention of writing a book at that time. At that time, I was just a young, curious coach. He's helped my coaching tremendously, but also, of course, he's been a great resource for the book.
So one of the things that I've always been grabbed by in the book is the secret, and Pato Alvarez said this is suffering, that's such a part of the Spanish culture. And if you want to be a champion tennis player, you absolutely have to suffer, and that the Spanish embrace it, and it's part of their culture. And that's always grabbed me because anybody that's played competitive matches, you see it every day here at Roland Garros. People are suffering. Tommy Paul is suffering, Ethan Quinn is suffering. All these players are suffering. Jack Draper, all the top players are playing these grinding matches where it's just suffer, suffer, suffer. But the Spanish embrace that. Talk a little bit more about how the Spanish embrace suffering.
Yeah, that's a really popular chapter in the book, and people always highlight that chapter. And for me, it was a very salient experience. This was it really stood out for me when I traveled in Spain as a young coach, and I went to different parts of the country to study with different top coaches and visited all the academies. And every coach I talked to mentioned suffering. It was bizarre, and I didn't know what to make of it at first. After, I've made probably 30 trips to Spain since then, and it's consistently and they have a culture of teaching that to young kids. And when I was younger, I didn't really understand where that came from. And in the book, I talk about how there may be some historical reasons why the Spanish culture feels that way. They lived under a very harsh dictatorship under Ferdinand Franco, and that regime ended in 1975. So this was a culture that got used to suffering. They suffered in many respects, in many aspects of their life, and I think they brought this idea of endurance, this idea of we must have a capacity to suffer to succeed and to survive. They brought that to the tennis. And there's also some links even back to the conquistadors of Spain, who were warriors and soldiers. They had a soldier ethic, and they were willing to suffer for their goals. So there's just the rich historical roots of suffering in Spain. But it's a lot of coaches preach hard work and discipline, but in Spain they just take it to, they 10x or 100x that, and it's everywhere. Every coach you speak to seems to have this common philosophy of that we must suffer, we must be comfortable suffering, we might even try to learn to love the suffer. And I just thought it really stood out to me in my early trips to Spain, and it became a chapter in the book.
So you've traveled all over Spain and gone to all these academies, and there's a great section in the book with where it outlines, all the academies and the pluses and the minuses and what everybody can keep track of with each respective academy. And a lot of people have read that chapter and they've gone to Spain to train under the Spanish system. But a lot of the players that are training at these academies now are not Spanish. They're foreign players. The foreign players are coming to Spain to train under the Spanish coaches and the Spanish methods. And some of there's been some criticism per se, as far as the depth right now of Spanish tennis is not what it used to be. You have Carlos Alcaraz, flying the flag, but there's not a lot of folks behind him at the moment. Usually there was a lot more players in the top 100 and in the men's and women's, but now it's the numbers have dropped a little bit. But just talk a little bit about how that the Spanish system per se isn't not as successful, but it's just being more successful to foreign players from other countries who are coming into Spain to train.
Yeah, this is the big story in Spain. Spain's become the premier destination for foreign players, and Spanish coaches have migrated all over the world to coach foreign players and to work in other countries. So, in a sense, Spain has cannibalized its own opportunities in the top 100. And every great Spanish coach and former Spanish pro that works with a foreigner is taking a spot from a Spanish kid in the top 100. If those players make it, it's a finite number of players who can make the top 100. So there's a lot of concern in Spain right now that Spanish academies and the club system and all of the great former players, all like basically the knowledge base of Spain, the great resources of coaches, they're not working with native born kids. And so there's a lot of Spanish coaches who are trying to urge the federation to take a role to try to get to connect young Spanish players with Spanish coaches and academies, and maybe even to help fund players to train in Spanish academies. Because right now, most of the brain trust in Spain is working with foreigners, and so when people say Spanish tennis is down, you have to understand what's actually happening. The teaching method is still wonderful and effective. The methodology is working really, really well with foreign players. And the problem is that Spain is it's basically competing against itself now. It's training a lot of foreigners to defeat young Spanish kids. So it's a real issue. I don't think Spain anticipated this, but I wrote articles about this and did podcasts on this going back almost 10 years now. This was a real concern of mine. If the best Spanish coaches go to other countries, if the best Spanish academies work primarily, if they recruit mostly foreign players, what's going to happen to how are you going to put Spanish players in the top 100?
So if you can't train in Spain, with all these great coaches, um, I guess you wouldn't argue that the next best place to train would be the beautiful mountains of Vermont at your academy, right?
Well, you can train the Spanish way with me. I have also taken Spanish tennis 2.0 or I'm teaching Spanish tennis 3.0. I combine Spanish tennis principles with modern biomechanics and sports science and a strong technical approach, which is not typical in Spain. So I think that I'm trying to personally take my coaching work to the next level. And Vermont is this is my home now. I have my own club here, and it's a great place for high performance juniors to train. There's no distractions, and we can suffer the Spanish way here in the mountains. And I'm producing a lot of top players. It takes a little time because Vermont doesn't have a reputation for tennis. And now that I'm here, I'm starting to produce a lot of top national ranked players, and people will start to redefine. People will start to take another look at what it means to train in the Northeast here.
Yeah, I've spent some time in Vermont, certainly in the winter skiing, but they had the tournament at Stratton Mountain, which was extremely popular in the 80s, and the weather and the beauty of Vermont during the summer is fantastic. And I worked at the women's event at Stratton, I think 1994. And that's just right down the road from where you are, and just the beauty of the mountains and the weather is spectacular to be there. So, but talk a little bit about what you have there in Vermont, and where can people find your website, and where can they sign up for to train with you? Not only in the summer, but perhaps in the winter and other
Yeah.
times.
Thanks, I appreciate that. You can just go to chrislewitt.com, or we're growing our YouTube channel, so that's a popular place to find me on youtube.com. Just search Chris Lewitt. And yeah, I basically train high performance juniors. I'm a private high performance coach, and we have a high performance summer camp. But players are coming from around the country here for serious training any time of the year. They can come in for blocks. I always have a few kids living here who are homeschool, who are training for a top national competition, and then I have players visiting from basically all over. So I'm focusing on trying to be the best high performance center in the Northeast, to just sort of dominate the Northeast, New England, and New York, and sort of level. So I want people who are in the Northeast, especially, to understand they have a high performance place to train and get professional coaching. They don't have to go to Florida. They don't have to go south. They don't have to take a flight. They can be just a short drive from really high quality training.
Yeah, or take an Amtrak right there, and that's easy too. So the new book is The Secrets of Spanish Tennis 2.0, which you can get wherever books are sold, Amazon.com and so forth. So Chris, great chatting with you. Congratulations on the book. It's really inspiring. I'm glad we published it, and it really is an excellent tool for player development and high performance, and it's a great tool for tennis. So congratulations on that. Thanks for all you do for tennis, and we'll look forward to seeing you down the road. And we'll stay tuned to your YouTube channel for more great content there too.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking this journey with me. You supported me when we did the first book many years ago, and you've been with me all this time. So I appreciate that very much.
Great, terrific, Chris. Thanks so much. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Randy.